Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Hi everybody, it's Kobe here, and I just wanted to say a few words before we go into the podcast for real, and that's mainly just to say how sorry we were to hear about the passing of Glenne Headly, who is the main female actor in the film who plays the jackal. We were actually recorded this episode 2 or 3 days before she died on the 8th of June, and that's why we don't mention her passing at all. And I just want to straighten out, in case it's not so obvious in the discussion, how much of an integral part she is in the story and how kind of important she is to the film and how it works and how it all comes together. So just want to notice that before we go into the rest of the show. Thank you. All right, guys. Is it Two Fat Ducks? Is it 22? Is it Two Fat Ducks?
Yes.
Okay, well, it's the 22nd episode of the Flixwatcher podcast. I'm Kobe.
I'm Helen. Bingo.
On this show, guys, we're talking about Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, the 80s classic starring Steve Martin and Michael Caine, as chosen by Rob and John from Future Music.
Like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. You can find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod and visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings about this particular show. As always, films reviewed in this podcast were available to stream on Netflix UK at the time of recording. There may be bad language and there may be spoilers. You have been warned. Do you want a professional sounding podcast as professional as Flixwatcher Pod? If you do, we recommend that you check out GL Productions. They're responsible for our editing and production. They're also going to give you a welcome package, 10% discount. If you're interested, email podcast@glpro.co.uk, send them the message that FlixWatcherPod sent you, and they'll give you 10% off your first package. Hello and welcome to this edition of FlixwatcherPod. Today we are joined by Rob and John. If you'd like to say hello and introduce yourselves, please.
What a mouthful of jelly babies.
What an intro.
Yep. I'm Rob. I'm an assistant editor in film TV and just generally a massive film geek. Anything to do with films, how they're made, who makes them, who's in them, just everything. So, yep.
And John Money, you can hear me on Future Music FM every couple of weeks, usually sort of techno and electronic side of things, but every now and then we'll do something relating to films, such as a sci-fi soundtrack special. But yeah, huge film fan over the years, and particularly enjoyed doing a podcast here previously where we had a go at Tom Hanks's That Thing You Do.
So you guys all knew each other from university. Who had the worst taste in films at uni?
I think we're kind of all. It was one thing actually we kind of got on with.
Yeah, I think so.
We're still friends, probably.
I hope so.
That's what connects you all.
So I kind of. So Helen and I definitely used to usher at the Art Centre Cinema every now and then.
We did.
In Aberystwyth.
In Aberystwyth, yes.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
Yeah, where we saw. I think it was when I saw Dead Man's Shoes. Saw there. That's still pretty Old Boy.
Is that the Shane Meadows Dead Man's Shoes?
It was, yeah. Gosh, not a dry eye.
Paddy Considine.
Classic. So yeah, so that goes back. That's going back 10 years or so.
I'll say it's more than that, mate.
We try not to think about it.
Yeah, don't remind me.
Because we were this film we're talking about now is just under 30 years old, which is a shock, actually, isn't it? You chose this film. What is it, Rob? And tell us why you chose it and what happens.
It is the marvellous 1988 film Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is one of the best late 80s comedies. It's Steve Martin at the height of his powers. Michael Caine, obviously being great as Michael Caine.
Yeah.
And just really kind of directed by Frank Oz, the great Frank Oz. And just really one of those films which still makes me laugh, is completely quotable. And I will always encourage anyone to go and see this film. So
already alluding to your kind of scores.
Yeah, no, it's going to be pretty obvious what my scores are, I think, in advance. So.
Can you give us a sort of synopsis for it?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. So there's a very well-off man played by Michael Caine who lives on the French Riviera, and he makes his money by conning rich women, and he hears about a man or woman called the Jackal, who is a con man who is infamous, and that is when a man called Freddie, played by Steve Martin, turns up, who is American and brash and cons people, but in a much more small-scale way. He's still very good at it, but he's has no problem embarrassing himself and has no class whatsoever. So Freddie ends up trying to learn from Lawrence, and then a woman becomes involved, and they have a bet where they go up against each other to try and con the woman out of $50,000 first.
Yeah.
And
hilarity ensues.
And whoever cons out the money first gets to stay. The other guy has to leave town.
Yeah.
So, where do you want to start? Helen, I'm going to start with you first. What are your thoughts on DRS?
I've seen this film a lot. Watching it when I was presumably quite young, because it obviously came out quite then, but I remember watching it a lot through the 90s. And
oh, hang on.
Just thinking about it.
It's one of those films, I can't believe anyone of our age who wouldn't have already seen it, because it's just one of those things that was just sort of on all the time. But it's easy to forget how funny Steve Martin was at one point, and this is one of his best performances. There was a lot of quotable moments, particularly to do with the cork, which everyone now is remembering about. I can't think how many times I have seen it, but it's quite a lot. There were some bits that I didn't find as funny this time around, which haven't watched it fairly recently, but I still think it just about stands up.
What scenes, might as well go straight into it, what kind of scenes do you think didn't hold up as much as back in the 80s, in late 80s?
Let's begin.
Come to me. I mean, how do you start to get into this? So basically, it comes to the point where Steve Martin has to play a character called Ruprecht. And
Ruprecht the monkey boy.
Yes, so that happens. And for his safety and for everyone else's safety, he is locked up in his own little space. I think you just have to watch it, really, and decide for yourself whether you think it's acceptable or it's just a bit silly.
It's funny. It's been a very, very long time since I watched this film, and I thought I remembered it far more than I did, as it turned out. But the problem is I did actually know the end already, which so many weren't watching from scratch. And I kind of veered between thinking, God, why is Rob making me watch this? To actually, that's still genuinely quite funny, and some really nice moments in it. So there's bits with the twist, the sailors kind of Shanghai Michael Caine, he reappears and stuff like that. I was probably laughing out loud again because I totally forgot about stuff like that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I was at one point thinking, yeah, they're kind of mocking people with disabilities quite a lot. Not really, but there's some Brits that are kind of pretty close to the way, and I thought, yeah, he's going to pretend to be a con artist, pretending to be a quite tragic sort of not a guy in a wheelchair with emotional problems. The bit where he plays the sort of the brother of the Michael Caine, pretending to be this kind of rich aristocrat, and the brother for association, he's sort of locked up playing this kind of weird guy eating applesauce with a cork and a fork. Could you get away with that now? I'm not sure. Probably can. I don't know. I mean, the whole what's the John Knoxville thing? He entered the Special Olympics, for example.
I think.
I think we're taking it probably a little bit too seriously.
I think it's taking it a little bit too seriously because I mean there is a stage show and I've seen the stage show and it's the same. There's still Rupert the Monkey Boy. He still does the same stuff, and it's more. I wouldn't say that the character that Steve Martin is playing is poking fun at disabilities, more taking advantage of people's guilt about people with disabilities.
Yeah.
I think that's how the con works, isn't it? That's how the con works. I mean, it's just like one of my absolute favorite scenes, apart from the Ruprecht scene, is when he says he's in the wheelchair with her, and he said that he's saving up for this treatment from this doctor, and Michael Caine pretends to be the doctor, and Michael Caine says that he thinks it's psychosomatic, and Steve Martin disagrees, and that's when he goes to get like a stick or a cane or something, and he just takes these massive run-ups and just whips them really hard in the legs, and Steve Martin just has to pull that grimacing face that he did so well back then and kind of go, I can't feel anything, and it still just absolutely makes me laugh, because she's there. She then afterwards says, "Look at him, he's so happy, he's crying." He's just.
I think that.
I don't think that's poking fun at.
No, I disagree.
I
I
really
don't really think so either. I wonder whether or not some of it is still genuinely quite funny. Some of it's like feels a bit more dated than I perhaps would remember, which is fair because it's actually 30 years old.
I think in this kind of climate, I'm not sure if it would be produced from scratch in the same way.
No, although they are trying to remake it.
Yeah, which is
with Rebel Wilson for some reason.
It's it's like the Ghostbusters reboot, so female characters, which if it's great. If it's not, then.
But it's that big 80s cash-in thing as well. I mean, apparently Rebel Wilson is also, I don't know why she keeps coming out, is developing a remake of Private Benjamin as well. The Goldie Hawn film.
Yeah. So who's going to be in that then? Aaron Wilson. If they're going to turn it around and, do the reverse of Ghostbusters.
Well, this film could have been a very different film. The trivia would suggest that it was originally a vehicle for Mick Jagger and David Bowie.
Yeah, I read that.
What a terrible, terrible film it would have been.
I was also reading about the people that Frank Oz tried to get before he settled on Michael Caine and Steve Martin. And the people for Michael Caine's part started off with John Cleese.
I could see that.
And then Michael Palin.
Mm-hmm.
And then Richard Dreyfuss. Which is just a really bizarre kind of threesome. And he eventually settled on Michael Caine because.
So he settled on Caine.
He settled on Caine because
not really afraid.
Well, no. Well, no. He decided on Michael Caine because he wanted him to be as close to David Niven as possible, which I think is,
it's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael Caine. That's basically kind of what he's doing. Is like almost like a David Niven impression for the film.
It makes me wish that Michael Caine would do more comedy. He just seems to do kind of shuffly, old, miserable now.
So who was up for the Steve Martin role? Do you take a note of that?
Apparently, Richard Dreyfuss thought that they wanted him for the Steve Martin role, but apparently they always wanted Steve Martin once it started moving forward.
I think it's one of those things where at that time in the 80s, if you wanted someone like Robin Williams, you got Robin Williams. There's no way else was going to replace him. Steve Martin and
Steve
Eddie
Martin,
Murphy kind of
I mean,
you're not going to. Although for Beverly Hills Cop, the original, it was Sylvester Stallone, wasn't it? Was supposed to be the.
Well, there's all kinds of ridiculous original castings, like Tom Selleck for Indiana Jones and like Will Smith for Neo in The Matrix. And
right,
stuff
he turned
like
that down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's all, and you're right. It would be completely. This would be a totally different film. Those would all be totally different films if you didn't have the cast. But that that comes from a point of nostalgia, doesn't it? That I can't imagine it being different, but it might still have worked. It might be great with David Bowie. I don't know.
Oh, but
I'm just trying to work
anyone
out who
who's
would have
seen
been
the
who.
video to Dancing in the Street would know that it would not be a good idea.
Especially the version where the music's turned off
That's
and it's just
it,
the Foley sounds.
It'd be that for
Imagine David Bowie being Ruprecht
50
in the Ruprecht scene. That would have been.
So you
I don't know
imagine
who-
David Bowie
horrendous.
taking Steve Martin's role?
I think so.
The upstart.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe. God, who knows? The one thing I did love actually was the music. Joyous kind of 80s throwback fun music, and it's just quite sort of
And it's a beautiful, and it's the sleazy 80s as well, isn't it? So everyone looks like they've got loads of money, and it's a beautiful setting, and yeah.
I think that scene you talked about with the whipping of the legs as a kid, that used to have me in stitches. That was probably the highlight scene for me. And like yourself, Helen, I'm sure I watched it like 5 times a year because it was either always on or always one of the things we had on VHS. And that was a time when you used to watch like 3 or 4 films maybe a day at the weekend if you just had lots of stuff on, and it used to come on repeat. But
wear the tape out.
Exactly. And you'd have to do that thing where you had to kind of adjust the tracking to try and get it to work properly.
There's some people out there going to go, what do you mean adjust the tracking?
A lot of people are going to be out there saying, what do you mean by tracking? Lines. I loved it. Yeah, I loved this as a kid. I think it's absolutely magnificent as a kid. And I'm sure I haven't seen it for at least 15 years though. So I was really chuffed that when you suggested it, Rob, I thought, yeah, that's one of the reasons we kind of started this, was to pull back films I hadn't seen for a while and compare them to how we saw them. So yeah, I loved the bits I still loved, and I was kind of did cringe a bit at Ruprecht, but I still think it's a generally good, willing film. And
Well, it actually had like you said before we started. It's actually got a twist ending as well.
That's what I was going to say.
And that's part of the reason why you couldn't make this now, because that would probably have been wrecked somehow in the in the trailers or in the internet or something.
Second trailer just gives that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Second trailer just tells you the entire film. But yeah, the twist that the woman that they're trying to con is actually been conning them the entire time,
and is the jackal.
Which is a nice. It's a great reverse. It's really interesting that it was
for the 80s as well.
That it was a woman as well. Yeah, and the fact that she comes back at the end and then tries to get them to
joining the
help her to con money out of loads of rich people arriving on a boat. It's just.
I think
great.
that is a lovely scene, actually. The realization where, so it's all come to a head, and Michael Caine sort of patch off in the plane. She thinks she's giving back the money and everything else, because actually, and then Steve Martin comes back and he's been handcuffed and conned, and he's explaining what's going on, and the realization that she's taken the money off them.
Well, Michael Caine's given away 50 grand of his own money, which is just kind of shows that even the con man can have a bit of a soft spot.
And Steve Martin's like, oh, low down. Michael Caine's just looking at the plane taking off, just with admiration of the eyes, says like, "Isn't she wonderful?" It's just that's quite a good scene.
I think though you talked about it being the 80s and this wouldn't have happened then, but Helen and I both read that book by Hadley Freeman.
The awesome Life Moves Really Fast.
Yeah, the Life Moves Really Fast, and that talks quite interestingly about how there were a lot of more interesting female characters in the 80s, progressive female characters in the 80s than there were perhaps in the 90s and nowadays. So I think this is an example. I don't think they talked about this film in the book, but this is an example where it kind of blew my mind the first time I saw it. It's like, oh, it's a woman. She's the jackal. Ah, great. I love that. And I think it's really cool how they kind of played that.
Yeah. So unexpected that a woman would be that intelligent, I suppose.
Ooh. It's going back to the 80s with all the making fun of the disabled people.
Yeah, but that...
And Steve Martin's swimwear.
Yeah.
I mean, did anyone else?
On the beach.
Yes.
Remember that?
Found that quite disconcerting.
Well, he was a very desirable man then. He was.
This is why it's funny that,
Yeah.
Again, it wouldn't be made like that these days.
No. I think they'd need to upgrade that.
No, there's not many films you say Michael Caine, he was like fourth on the list or something, and Steve Martin was our first choice for that role.
In the stage show, did he have Speedos on as well?
Do you know, I don't remember.
Probably that bit's
I think
not
it was
really
a
in, is it?
normal short. Yeah, because the whole point is he is brash and he doesn't give a shit. So I think it was quite short shorts, but it wasn't like...
Oh, no, I think it was almost...
No, I just mean in the stage show.
Oh, in the stage show, sorry, yeah. Not sort of slightly glittery red Speedos. Yeah.
John, we know you've got a set of those at home.
You've got to.
Yeah.
So I think it is a mix of pure physical comedy and very clever kind of role reversal and wordplay, which is often quite rare. You either kind of get the full out physical comedy or something that's a little bit cerebral. So it is a very good mix, I think.
I don't think you don't really get films now, and this would make me sound very nostalgic, but there's not many comedy films now tend to just be people improvising, or especially American comedy films are very much about improvising, just leaving the camera on and things like this. Whereas this is, proper pratfalls and proper physical comedy, but like you say, the cerebral part of it as well, and that mix compared to a modern comedy film, I don't think you get that so much now.
And you saying that you're a big fan of Judd Apatow, who is the master of leaving the camera rolling and presenting it to everyone.
Yeah, no, I really am, because there's something kind of
painful,
masochistic about it, which is which I find them funny but very realistic, because the reason I like them is because they're slightly boring. Because no, because
he's kind of gone downhill, hasn't he? Started off quite high, and then
Apatow.
Yeah, it's gone.
Where did he start high?
Well, I guess
what was the high point?
40-Year-Old Virgin was probably the.
Was that the high point?
Well,
do you not like any of his films then?
No, I do. I just think generally there's time that could be taken off, and I think my favourite film of his would be Funny People if it was a lot shorter. I think the premise of that was
if it wasn't 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, going back to Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, because that's what we're here.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say it's the same. It's the same era as, like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which still had that physical comedy, but
Steve
also the
Martin
cerebral
again.
thing. But there's still a bit of heart in there.
Yeah.
There's still.
It's quite sweet, isn't it, in some places?
It's not John Hughes like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is, because that's really quite sentimental in parts.
It's almost like a bridge from that kind of humour into adult humour that we had. So it was like, oh, this is kind of like a bit of an adulty film, but we're watching it.
Yeah,
and
I
finding
mean,
it funny.
the rating must have been a 15 or something. Sure,
No, I'm sure it would have been a PG.
I don't know.
I don't know, because there's not really any swearing.
No,
is there?
there's
No,
real-
PG, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's PG nowadays, certainly. But it's quite weird how some ratings change, because Ghostbusters is now a 12 when it was a PG when it first came out.
Oh, really?
And things like Aliens are now 15 when that was an 18 when it first...
Alien?
Yeah, Alien and Aliens are both 15.
No, they must still be 18.
No, they're 15s.
No.
Yeah.
Jeez, I'm not letting my daughter watch them when she's 15.
You should do that.
You got to save something.
What parenting's all about.
No, that's what bad parenting is about. Bad parenting is when you go to your daughter's class when she's in year 6, and her friend says, "Oh, I watched Alien at the weekend." And you're like, "What?" She says, "Oh, it wasn't scary." What do you mean it wasn't scary? Desensitized much? Yeah, no, I suppose it's, in a way, it's got a dark edge, but it's actually quite an innocent movie, really, isn't it?
It's silly and sweet.
Yeah.
It is ultimately about two men that try to con women out of money to some extent.
Well, that's what all us men do long term.
But it's done with a bit of humour, obviously. But yeah, and it turns out it gets turned around on them in the end, and they both get the just desserts, I suppose. But both characters are great. I kind of the whole Michael Caine thing. Actually, for me, almost the early bits where Michael Caine's trying to get rid of him repeatedly. Steve Martin, the new brash guy on town, who's going to sort of scare away, as they call it, all the game. And because Michael Caine's is a very sophisticated guy, he plays all this sophisticated everything else, and Steve Martin is Steve Martin.
But then he spends all this time kind of training him up in hilarious montage.
Yeah.
For him
I really thought of Team America montage at that point. But.
To then basically go, oh, sod it, I'll just make you be these ridiculous characters.
True.
Well, that's all part of the game, wasn't it? To get him, because he wouldn't accept just going away the normal way by being set up by the police and being told to kind of fuck off out of time. He came back after that, so he had to up his game to get him away, which worked for a second, but still didn't take. But...
Not mother.
Yeah, that was funny.
Mother. You said, who was it said that this was Steve Martin at the height of his game? Do you reckon?
I think after this, we're kind of looking at maybe Parenthood.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, and
It's a
getting
little
into
bit later.
and Father of the Bride.
And then Father of the Bride
where
was
Father of the Bride is
1991.
kind of when it started
And
going
then
wrong for me.
anything post then is, he's not really come back
I
from
mentioned
that.
it to a young guy today that we were doing this, and he said, "Oh, I haven't seen that one." And I said, "Oh, yeah, Steve Martin when he was really famous." And he said, "Yeah, it's Cheaper by the Dozen was all right," but and I was like, "I'm talking way before that, mate."
Yeah.
So this is LA Story, Parenthood.
Oh, I've forgotten about LA Story.
The Jerk.
The Jerk, yeah.
Well, The Jerk's his first movie, and that was like 79 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is still the one. That's genuinely my favourite film of all time.
Oh, is it?
Oh.
Yeah, it genuinely is. I mean, so this is very close to that in terms of my Steve Martin love, but it's just got those moments where they just let him off the train a little
comeback. Who could be a good writer for him? Who do you think?
bit. He just plays banjo now.
Steve Martin.
Yeah, he just plays.
Yeah,
He plays banjo.
I've seen him on
collects
Jules
art.
Holland playing banjo. Yeah.
That's what he does. He came back for the SNL 40th anniversary, and it was hilarious.
One thing I actually wanted watching it again that I didn't quite jump out of my seat, but it was Emperor Palpatine. Is Ian McDermott plays Michael Caine's butler.
Oh,
Who was late and was like, whoa. There's a few lines of dialogue in the film. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, execute orders, whatever it is. So that was quite interesting. I didn't realise he was in it. So we're going to go on to,
And of course, the female character, Glenne Headly.
Yeah.
Headly. You may know her from ER. She was quite a biggish character in
of
ER.
course.
With Dr. Carter, she
Yep.
was a surgeon.
Yep.
But never really kind of did that much else.
No.
Other than this.
seen her recently in the HBO miniseries, in the Night of.
Oh, I didn't get around to watching that.
Yeah, so I just watched that quite recently. So before watching Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, it was one of those where I was like, I know her from somewhere. Yeah, but she hasn't yet.
Great voice.
Yeah, fantastic. Guys, I think it's time for popcorn.
Sure.
Before we go to the
Popcorn
scores.
time.
So we got the guys from Popcorn Shed to give us some lovely popcorn. Take a big handful of that and put it in
you.
your face.
Sure.
So this here is the secret family recipe, although they put the ingredients on the back, so we all know the secret now. But it's pecan pie, caramel popcorn with golden roasted pecans.
Pecan pie.
And it's super tasty.
That's a different film.
What film's that?
When Harry Met Sally.
Ah.
I would like a piece of your pecan pie.
I hope somewhat it's that. I've looked for that a few times.
It was not on there.
It's,
Yeah,
it's
it's not.
on
That was-
French
I
Netflix, believe it or not.
I
think.
that was actually my first thought for this.
Yeah.
Before I found this
That
was
is-
on there.
I
that is
watched
close to
that at New Year. It is still
close
brilliant.
to perfect film.
Yeah.
That's one of the films
That's
it's talked about.
why I
in-
wanted to watch it, because I read the book.
Yeah.
And,
Have you seen it before?
yeah, I've seen loads. But
There's got to be people who haven't seen that film.
probably.
I bet.
Yeah.
And they are
And same
missing
again
out.
with Billy Crystal, probably like
Yeah.
who's
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are they now?
Young
he's
people.
Mike in
Mike
Monsters, Inc.
Wazowski.
Yeah, in Monsters,
He
Inc.
did a series with Josh Gad recently called The
Oh,
Comedians,
that was fucking
which
awesome.
is really, really good,
Yeah.
and it just got cancelled.
Was it just one season?
Yeah, no one watched it.
Oh
Oh,
man,
no.
that was
So
so
fucking
That
good.
was so. There's a scene where he's walking through a supermarket when he's high on marijuana, and his face is just one of the absolute pure joy when he's kind of just high with a big, stupid, goofy grin on his face. I think it's time.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. Build your fits of the day with Abercrombie's newest denim drop. Here's where to start. Abercrombie's 90s straight jean goes with any shirt from tees to sweater polos. Super versatile. Their loose and baggy jeans are more trend forward, so you can grab those and go out with your friends. Abercrombie's denim fits come in a range of washes. Build your looks around Abercrombie denim. Shop online or in store.
The scores, guys. We're going back to Dirty Rotten Scoundrels
That's
after
it,
a bit of a
Popcorn
sound out.
interlude.
Bit of an interlude. So, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. We're going to go to Rob because you chose this recommendability score.
5. Everyone should watch this just to see a masterclass in Steve Martin.
So hold on. If Planes, Trains and Automobiles is your favorite film, is that equally as recommendable as this?
That definitely gets a fucking 10. I mean,
I know on the scale of 5.
No, because Planes, Trains is just beyond. It's beyond scores. It's bigger than numbers. So, no, I would highly recommend this.
Yeah, Helen. Oh, sorry, John.
Keep with the order.
Guess first. Yeah.
I'm going to go 3.
Oh, whoa.
No.
Lower than I thought.
Yeah.
You're dead to me.
Yeah, I can look at that.
The friendship is over.
It was more entertaining than actually, no, to be fair, I'd forgotten all about it and then remember bits of it. I kind of meandered between quite enjoyed it and I thought, actually, it's not as fun as I remember. But still, if you want to rake over the sort of nostalgia a bit and give another go, it is still entertaining. So
Rake
3.
over nostalgia.
Rake over nostalgia, yeah. Was looking at me.
Helen.
It's a tricky one because don't roll your eyes at me.
Still eating the popcorn. I'm going to take the popcorn time's over.
Take it away. We can jelly babies together.
The soft chew.
I mean, we've all seen it before. We reviewed it, haven't we?
Yeah.
Loads of times.
This is probably at least the 20th time I've seen it, but not for a while.
Not for a long time.
yeah,
to be
so
honest.
I can't imagine what kind of person you are if you haven't seen it. I mean,
Younger.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how someone watching it for the first time would feel, and how I feel about, because watching it again recently, I remembered it being a lot funnier, but obviously time has passed and I've seen other films and my tastes have changed. I'm going to go 4.5.
Ooh.
There was a lot of meandering for a very high
Yeah,
score.
yeah. 4.5.
Well,
I
kind of think if you haven't seen it, then really you should really, because it is very funny and it's kind of one of those Steve Martin films that was brilliant for him, and he's never going to be this brilliant again, probably not. So you should probably watch it. But
the funny thing is now that watching it again, it now feels like a Michael Caine film with Steve Martin in it. Just because of if somebody hadn't watched it, was 10 years younger, 15 years, whatever it is, say
Yeah,
watched
because
this
he's
film. Why? 'Cause
obviously...
it's an early Michael Caine film with a guy called Steve Martin in it, which is a bit harsh given where it was time. But watching it now, like where the stars are.
Why do we fall down, sir? So we can pick ourselves up again.
Exactly.
That's all everyone's going to know.
I'm going to put 4 because that's where I feel. Yeah, I think it's good. I can't think who shouldn't watch it, but I think like just hearing you talk about it a bit, Helen, and just thought, oh, there might be some
Before
people.
I rewatched it, I probably would have just gone, straight 5.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I wish I hadn't rewatched it.
But there are some things like I did forget, like John was saying that with the soldiers, with the Navy people.
Yeah.
Where he took them into the van and then he comes back. There's lots of things I've forgotten that were really cool. Repeat viewing score. So now we've repeat viewed in the early 90s and 80s when it first came out. What are we thinking about now, Rob?
I did originally write down 5, but just to not be so obvious, I'm going to actually say 4 because it's the kind of I recognise that there are things which like you guys have said might not necessarily sit well with everyone now, or some people might have better memories about it than when they rewatch it. But I still think it's one of those films that if it was on TV, and like I was saying earlier, if it's on TV, I think you'd watch it.
Yeah.
If you were like eating a quick dinner or something, it's the kind of film you could just sit and watch.
Yeah.
And know that you're going to laugh.
You can pick up at any point in the film.
If sometimes you just need to watch a film because you need to feel good and forget about something. I think you can tune out and watch this, and you're going to laugh. Yeah. And it'll be fun.
John?
I was going to go 2, but I think I'll say Rob's kind of talked me up to maybe a 3. I think because I'm probably not going to sit down and make a point of watching it in the near future. But yeah, possibly it's despite other things I said earlier, it's not really offensive and it's quite fun. It's quite entertaining, and yes, there's some bits even sort of that you might think I'd rather leave it in the 20 years ago when I enjoyed it as a kid. But there's still bits that are still entertaining and funny. And I think it probably deserves more than a 2 because it's a lot better than some other films that you wouldn't ever really want to watch again. But not a 4.
Helen?
I'm going to go 3.5. What? I think it's a little bit longer than it needs to be. You could trim maybe 20 mins off.
15, yeah.
15, 20 mins off would be it. But I would probably, if someone said, I haven't seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, do you want to watch it? I would probably say yes. And again, if it happened to be on and I was sat in front of the TV, I would watch it at any point. I wouldn't feel like I need to see it from the start, but I wouldn't, from doing this, think, I need to see that again soon. But yeah, I will watch it again.
I think I'm going to say 3 based on how often I used to watch it when it first came out on TV and wearing down the VHS to how often I'm likely to watch it now. I'm sure I'll watch it multiple times now, but I think it'll be once every couple of years type thing at the very, very most. But unlike you guys have iterated, I've said before, if it's on TV or if it's on and want something in the background to wait until the whipping scene or wait until Rupert the Monkey Boy does something, then I'll happily sit down and watch that and maybe dive out when it gets a bit boring. But yeah,
you're not going to buy it, are you? I mean, no one's. I'm not going to buy it. I love it, but I'm not going to spend £8 downloading or something. Yeah. No, exactly. But I just mean like,
you don't need to feel the need.
You
to
don't need to permanently own it.
Yeah.
You don't have that moment where you think, I really need to watch it right now.
Yeah.
Small screen score.
I think it does very well on a small screen. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that I watched it 30 years ago when I clearly wouldn't have been out. Well,
did anyone here watch it in the cinema?
No, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
So that would be a bit hard. Yeah.
I don't remember
because at 8 years old.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I would have watched it on a when TV screens were 4:3 and the whole film had been panned and scanned and like you say with the tracking and stuff. And I don't think it detracts from the comedy of it.
So I used to go to cinemas a lot when I was a kid, but at 8 years old, I would have been watching things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and that kind of pap. I wouldn't have seen this at the cinema. So that's quite interesting. Sorry, your score? 4. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 actually is fine. Yeah, works well on a small screen. Wouldn't rush out to watch in the cinema, but yeah, perfectly fine on TV.
Well, I'm going to give it a 5. I mean, this is a perfect film for watching on TV, and you could kind of pop in a little break, but Friday night, get the beers in, stick this on. It's quite funny. It's laid back. There's no need to watch it on a massive screen. But yeah,
I wouldn't get the beers in to watch this, but I'd be like, oh, I've got beers. Yes, I'm gonna crack open.
Let's order a pizza.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go 5 as well because I think there's no benefit really in watching it in the cinema at all.
Well, also it is sort of, you know, what we set this podcast out to do. It's one of those films that is quite old now, and you may have missed it, or you may have seen it when you were a lot younger, and it might be one that you listen to this and go, yeah, I think I'll give it a go, and you can just pop on Netflix. There it is.
Although actually, I was just an extra thought thinking about it is that if like Prince Charles did a re-release or something of it, it's the kind of film, because it's a comedy film from the 80s that is very quotable. I would actually really quite like to watch it with an audience. In terms of, you know, comedies always work better when there's a lot of people watching them and they're all laughing together. And I think that would be an interesting.
Everyone could go with a little eye patch.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you would get
secret cinema.
Well, the funny moments would be bigger, wouldn't they?
There would be, and I do kind of quantify whether I'd like to see it at Prince Charles, and I think this is good, but I don't think I would fork over the money and the time, the effort to go to Prince Charles to watch it. I think there's other films I'd rather watch it with a shared experience. But do you want to adjust your score?
No, let's leave it at that.
Engagement score.
I mean, I would say 5 because, as we were saying, you could just switch it on and enjoy it. You don't have to be fully engaged. But you can be fully engaged. You know, you can just, and that's it grabs your attention for the full movie, or it can grab your attention for part of it, I suppose. So I just think it's very watchable. So I would say 5.
John?
3 again. Well, for the very reason I didn't feel like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to watch this all the way through. And I think it is, but I think because some bits are better than others with hindsight, I think, and me personally did enjoy it. Some bits better than others, but so I'm not gonna give it a huge score, but it's still entertaining enough.
I'm gonna give it a 3 just because I've seen it so many times that I kind of knew what was coming, so I didn't need to be fully engaged. And I did get quite into sort of trivia reading while I was watching it as well, just because I was just like, oh, I want to find out a little bit more about it. But if you're watching it for the first time, I think the runtime shouldn't be a problem. I think if you've never seen it before, it should kind of zip along quite nicely. But yeah, when you've seen it, 10 plus times, it's hard to be that fully engaged, I think.
I think 2.4 for me. The you're laughing at the decimal places. I think I hadn't seen it like for 10, 15 years, and I had forgotten what was going to happen. But now I've seen it again. I don't think I need to really be. I'll just be kind of waiting for the next funny bit to happen, and quite happy to be pottering around that until the next funny bit happens again. So I don't think I need to be fully engaged. Doesn't really detract from how much I'll enjoy it, though. I don't think, but I don't feel I need to be like 100% on it and down. Yeah, looking into the film. That gives us an overall score of 3.84, which I think is very reasonable.
Yeah, it's about 4, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about a 4-star film. Round it up. Should we go to the Twitter people?
What are they saying?
What are the Twitter people saying? Jojo Cast, I remember watching this classic when younger, but tried again recently and it fell flat, so probably 2.5 stars now. Was I just having an odd day? What do you reckon? Was Jojo Cast having an odd day?
No.
Yes.
Are you Jojo Cast?
It's definitely higher than a 2.5.
Yeah.
I mean, 3.5 is probably the lowest, really, you could get on it.
Theme Park Films podcast says, one of my favourite films, Why is the Cork on a Fork? And Caine hitting Martin's legs are 2 of the funniest scenes ever. We've talked about both of those. Doesn't give a rating.
No.
Dare they?
No, Theme Park Films. Brr. Launching the pilot says, very enjoyable romp with petty great casting. I'm sure it's supposed to be pretty. Never sure who's going to outwit who. 4 stars. And I think, yeah, when you first watch it, it's really good.
Also, I think Beardo Talks Film, this is great. It's right funny, like, which is, yeah, that's true. But you didn't give us a rating out of 5.
Yeah. So again, positive. Well, it's positive on the Twitter as well, apart from Jojo Cast, which is kind of mediocre. But yeah, I think
it's worth a revisit. I think if you have seen it a long time ago, definitely go back to it. And if you haven't seen it, then give it a go.
Absolutely.
And find out why the cork is on the fork.
Rupert the Monkey Boy. Guys, who are you? How can we find you?
So, John Lunny, you can find me fortnightly on Future Music FM or on Twitter or Mixcloud at John Lunny.
I'm Rob Garwood, and you can find me on Twitter as @RobMakesFilms on there occasionally.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, cheers for your time, guys. Really enjoyed it, and thanks for the film choices.
See you again soon.
Sayonara.
Cheers.
Bye.
And that was Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, as chosen by Rob and John. Thank you very much, guys, and do follow them online. We've got all the links to find them in the show notes. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. And, of course, we want to big up Tony and Jay and also Greg, our editors from GL Productions. Of course, please big up Mighty People for the tunes you can hear now. And at the start of the podcast, find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod and visit our website, flixwatcher.tv. Cheers.